Or how is Diane Kitten?
Diane Kitten is doing so well.
Yes.
She's having a great day. She's really happy, doing lots of work around the home. And so she's like been a little displaced, but she's really also enjoying like all the boxes and general shit all around.
Well, welcome to the Other 51. I'm Brian Moritz, and I am joined this week by one of my favorite Broadway people, writer of Be More Chill, writer of Love and Hate Nation, writer of the Untitled Unauthorized Hunter S. Thompson Musical, which is going to be the focus of our conversation today, among other writerly shenanigans. Joe Iconis, welcome back. Thanks for being here.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So I have right next to me, I did dig, this wasn't just living here, but I dug it out today. My copy of Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, purchased
Yeah.
purchased because of your show, which I didn't see, but I purchased it last fall at the Strand on the Lower East Side of Manhattan. I was gonna Kindle it, but then I realized you can't Kindle. There are some books you can't Kindle, and this feels like a book you absolutely cannot Kindle.
Definitely not. You need to hold it in your hand and be able to write on it and deface property with it and all that. It has got to take up space.
Yes, it was. I mean, the book holds up. It's great, but I loved reading it because I had never read it before. And like I've been in journalism my entire adult life, and I had never read the whole of Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, and it is crazy. It is an insane book.
Yeah, it's insane. It's absolutely like out of its mind. But yeah, I think I think it holds up so well because as much as it's like a bit of a time capsule of a really specific period in American history, it also is like so its own thing that even at that time, it felt like, what the hell is this? Like it
Right.
felt sort of like slightly displaced, even, when it came out in 1970. And so I feel like because of that, it feels kind of weirdly timeless.
So congratulations on the show and the awards that it won in San Diego last year. It was a great run.
Thanks.
Um, I got to start with the title, the Untitled Unauthorized Hunter S. Thompson Musical. That's a
Mhm.
mouthful. So how did that become the title of the show as the actual title of the show?
I've always when I sort of first conceived of the show, I always kind of thought that it would have a big long rambly title that felt like in the spirit of Hunter S. Thompson, even though like his a lot of his titles were fairly succinct, it's like I my his the sort of first thing that he wrote that is like a sort of hallmark of gonzo journalism, and like the first sort of instance is this article called "The Kentucky Derby is Decadent and
Yes.
Depraved."
Hmm.
And I've always loved that as a title so much. And so I was thinking maybe it'll be something like that. But then the more I worked on it, the more it felt like I just think this thing shouldn't have a title. It's like it should be like this is the musical about Hunter S. Thompson, like should be the title of the thing, And so then I kept getting really excited about that idea. And then the more that we got into it, the more we realized that like, oh, this needs to be an unauthorized musical for various reasons, legal and artistic. And so then it just felt kind of like badass to put unauthorized in the title of this thing. And I think once we realized that it needed to be unauthorized, and I started sticking that word in the title, then it felt like, oh, this has gone beyond being a placeholder, and this actually is what this thing should be called. So, my great dream is that this show, makes it to Broadway and beyond, and I would really love if it was able to retain its title all the way to Broadway. I think it can, and it's one of those things that like it is a mouthful. It's so awkward, and it's so just kind of like, what, it sounds like the sort of thing that's like, why would I want to see this? But I think it's the kind of thing where like af after you live with it a little bit, it becomes like a no-brainer,
Yeah.
Keep thinking Fiddler on the Roof, like no one knew what the hell that meant when that thing.
I just want to see this on a Broadway for many reasons, but see him trying to design it so it can fit on a marquee. I think that would be delightful.
I know, me too. Yeah, how many words can you cram in a little box?
So why did this have to be unauthorized? You'd said that a few times. So why did you realize, and how did that come about that this had to be an unauthorized musical?
Yeah, well, it's for starters, it's a musical about an artist, it's about a writer. And so when I first set out to write this thing many years ago, I thought, well, I will certainly have Hunter S. Thompson writing in this musical. I will certainly have to quote Hunter S. Thompson in order to write, a show about him. And then, I connected with the Hunter S. Thompson estate a little bit, and it became like, oh, right, you actually have to get like rights to quote to quote somebody. And the more, we got into it, the more it felt like, oh, it will be prohibitively expensive and also just like impossible to get the rights that we would need to get in order to quote him. And so the estate was basically like, look, do whatever you want. As long as you're not directly quoting Hunter S. Thompson, you can write whatever the hell show you want to write. And so it felt like, okay, how do we make this musical about Hunter S. Thompson without literally quoting him? But the sort of like magic thing about that was that throughout the whole process, I kept saying it's about Hunter S. Thompson, but it's not about Hunter S. Thompson. It's not, this isn't a musical that's just supposed to be like a straight biography of this guy, telling you these are the great things that he did and this is why we should celebrate him. It's as much a critical look at him as it is a celebration of him, and it's about much larger things. And so having to do the work of extracting any direct quote from Hunter S. Thompson out of the Hunter S. Thompson musical actually allowed me to dig deeper and actually allowed me to get to the heart of the things that I was saying and get to what was underneath. And it really made it impossible to just do the like standard biopic thing. Um, and 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 yeah, and so and also, and the other thing about the unauthorizedness of it is that Hunter S. Thompson in his writing, he was an embellisher, he was a liar. He, that is like part and parcel of gonzo journalism. It's being wholly subjective, and it felt like the only way to make a musical about him was to do that in the writing of it, and it's the kind of shit you can only do if you're unauthorized, just making stuff up, stuff that is true in its spirit and is true to the person and to the events, but not necessarily based in fact. So yeah, all those things together is why I felt like it just had to be unauthorized.
It does seem like no, there couldn't be an authorized Hunter S. Thompson musical. Like that just doesn't seem to really go together.
Yeah.
But also it does make me not quoting the lines. It's got to be cool for as an audience member who knows about Hunter S. Thompson because I don't know if it's a great comparison or not, but you've been to movies about musicals, and Almost Famous pops into my head. The musical
Mhm.
that it was, and it was a great show, but you're waiting in a lot of lines for the bankrupt, the only currency in this bankrupt world, and all the classic lines which need to be there because they do. But then if you're not waiting for it, then that's got to be a cool experience to kind of free you up from waiting for the halfway to Barstow when the drugs kick in or whatever.
Uh-huh. Yeah, for sure. And it was scary to not have those, sort of iconic lines, especially because he was a writer. So
Mhm.
it's like it feels like it's even more extreme than, having a musical about, when you think of other bi musicals, right? Like Hamilton or like, Jesus Christ Superstar or something. It's like you gotta have like, it's like we're like, oh, Alexander Hamilton, it's like it's the moments in his life that people know that you
Mhm.
gotta have in there. And and it's and same with Jesus. It's the moments that people know, but no one's like, oh, the time that Jesus said this literal thing that was so great that I can't wait to hear in the show. And so with Hunter S. Thompson, it's like there's these, these are these lines, these things that he said that are like on T-shirts that people, if they know him, they have. So that was a little scary to be like, we're just like, I'm not doing it, and I can't do it. But the amazing thing was to see people who knew him really well come to the show and not be bothered by it at all. And a lot of times actually think that we quoted him when we just didn't. And that's something that I've had experience with, because I wrote this musical called Broadway Bounty Hunter, where Annie Golden, who's an amazing actress who I love, and is kind of a muse of mine. She starred in it as this down on her luck musical theater actress, who gets wrapped up in the world of bounty hunting, and the name of the character in the musical is Annie Golden. So people would talk about it as like Annie Golden playing herself, which is like kind of the meta idea. But the truth of it was that it's, the real Annie Golden is very, not terribly much like the musical version of Annie Golden, and it's very similar to like John Malkovich in the movie being John Malkovich. And people would go to that show and just be like, I can't believe you like incorporated all these things about Annie's life into the show. And it would be like, I really didn't. Like, you actually like, we like name drop Hair, which she was in, and that's like literally it. But everyone left that show thinking it was some like bizarre twisted biography of Annie Golden, and it wasn't. So I feel like this is the second time where I've had that experience where people keep thinking I'm like quoting and referencing far more than I actually am.
So backing up, because I know you worked on this show for a really long time. How did you first get associated and connected with writing a musical about Hunter S. Thompson?
Yeah, it's Hunter S. Thompson was an author who I was aware of throughout my young life. And then really it was the movie version of Fear and Loathing that turned me on to him. That movie came out when I was in high school, and I guess I was like maybe 16 or so when the movie came out, and I wanted to see it because I was a Terry Gilliam fan, who directed the movie. And so I was like Terry Gilliam fan and Johnny Depp, and it felt like this cool movie. And I couldn't get into it because it was an R-rated movie, and so my grandparents took me to see it. So that was my first experience with Fear and Loathing, seeing it with my grandparents, who did not enjoy the movie at all. But I mean, they were super cool. They were like very down, but it was just like it was the most like, what is this? Absolutely. And so, but I was really intrigued by it. And so then I read some stuff, and I was like really, Hunter S. Thompson was very on my radar, and I was really struck by, certain things about the movie and about the language and about the sort of like rock and roll uh poeticism of it all. But it wasn't until Hunter died in 2005 that I really got turned on to this idea of writing a musical about him, because I started reading all of these firsthand accounts of people who knew him, who were sort of eulogizing him when he died. And I was so taken with how the sort of cartoon version of him that I knew from both Fear and Loathing and just from pop culture, it both was like really, really like uh, built up by the firsthand accounts. Like a lot of the stuff people were saying, it felt like it was, the things he did were even more extreme and more cartoony than the cartoon version. And then other stories that people were telling really it felt like there was a real tension between the public persona and the private persona of him. And it felt like there was such a weird dichotomy to this man. And then I started getting really into watching interviews with him all throughout the years. I was so taken with seeing how substances affected his physical health and his speech. And I was so taken with his the way he interacted with pop culture and with politics, and how he always maintained this sort of larger than life personality in so many different ways over many, many years. And so I had a meeting with Chris Ashley in 2007, I guess. And it was because I was a huge fan of Chris Ashley as a director. He directed the revival of the Rocky Horror Show that was on Broadway when I was in college, which I saw countless times. And I'd seen a whole bunch of his other stuff, and I just love him so much. And so I had invited him to a concert at an Iconis and Family Show at the Beachman. He came, he liked it. We had this meeting, and he said at the meeting, I'm just about to take over artistic director of La Jolla Playhouse. Do you have any ideas for new musicals? And I said a couple, one of which was a musical about Hunter S. Thompson, because it was on my mind then. and he commissioned me to write it, and that's really how it started. And that was many many years ago.
So you have obviously had a number of shows going on along this. So walk us through that process of writing it. This is 2007, 2008. Like what kind of fits and starts did you have with it? Like how did you go from that to kind of starting to write it to getting something on stage last year?
It's really it's sort of like a multi-volume coffee table book in and of itself, the creation of this show from first idea to first production. So the story is, I had the idea, and uh there were producers attached at the time, a producing entity that like doesn't even exist anymore. That's how long ago it was. They were like, oh, we want to pair you with a fancy book writer, like a namey person. Because at the time I didn't even have the cult notoriety that I do now, so they were like, let's get you someone namey. And so I met a bunch of like very sparkly writers, and I ended up going with one who is so awesome, and he's a playwright who I absolutely love, and he's like the coolest guy, and he just had no time to write an original musical. And so we were kind of like screwing around for a few years, and he just didn't have the time at that point in his life. Hilariously, he is the book writer of a musical that is quite current, which I think is so funny. That he started writing probably 10 years after we, tried to write under it. And so I ended up parting ways. And this whole time I was like, I don't want to start writing songs for this thing until I have a, collaborator, until I'm actually working on stuff. And so I was just sort of thinking about it. And then I found another collaborator. I started writing stuff for the show around 2012. I wrote the opening number. That was my first tune. And I wrote the opening number of Hunter the same like month that I wrote the first songs for Be More Chill, because I started both of those projects in earnest like the same month, like September of 2012 is when I started both those projects. And so we spent years and years and years working on the show in various drafts. The show changed so much over time. I wrote a lot of songs that never ended up in the show. I wrote a lot of songs that changed so much, and I wrote a lot of songs that sound pretty much exactly what they sounded like, when I first wrote them 5-10 years ago. And so yeah, so over like, whatever the subsequent 8 years, the show had a ton of readings and workshops, and it was always like feeling very amorphous, no matter how much we worked on it. And a big issue, I think, was that because the show is so political, we always felt the pressure to have the show be in conversation with the time it was being performed at, in a really explicit way, right? And when you think about like from 2008 to 2020, the politics of America shifted so insanely during that time. There were so many things that happened during those years that it was like, it felt like the show kept changing just to like keep up with the times, like Obama to Trump, to Biden. It was just like, it felt like the show was spinning its wheels to try to keep up with all this shit. And so then 2019 hit. I was doing Love and Hate Nation, and the March of 2020, I had in my schedule as this time that I was going to not be in rehearsal for the first time in like 2 years, because Be More Chill opened in London in February 2020. And so I was coming back from London, and I was gonna hunker down, and it was decided that I was gonna do this rewrite of the Hunter script. And so I was going to sort of take it myself, and do a massive rewrite because we had done a reading of it in 2019 and it wasn't clicking. And the book writer at the time was like, I'm going to take a step back from this. And I was like, cool, I'm going to like see what I can do here. And so the top of the pandemic, I spent the first few months completely like dismantling the show and then putting it back together. And I ended up by the summer with like a brand new version of the musical. And then myself and Chris Ashley, the director, would meet, on Zoom and work on the show. And eventually we were like, okay, this is feeling pretty good. Let's do a workshop. We did a workshop summer 2021 at La Jolla. I'm sorry, summer 2022 at La Jolla. And that was the first time the show was ever on its feet in any capacity. And it was this kind of new version of the show that we did. And that went really well. And La Jolla was like, great, let's do a production of this. And it was so bizarre because it had been like over 10 years of working on this thing where every year La Jolla would be like, oh, we're going to do a production this year. And then it would be like, actually, it's not quite ready, not quite ready. It was so weird to be like, oh, it's ready. Like everyone involved is really into this thing now. Great. And so, yeah, that was what happened. And so it's a process that's not that different from, most new musicals. It's just, for a million reasons, it just took like, so much longer than most new musical processes, which are already usually quite drawn out, take. So I'm happy to be on this side of the development process of this musical.
So just curious, when you're rewriting the book, rewriting the script, how different is that for you as a writer than writing music? I mean, is it different parts of a writer brain? Is it kind of still similar because it's the same show? What's that like writerly for you?
It's definitely related. Like when I'm writing music and lyrics and when I'm writing script, it's certainly related, especially because I tend to I tend to think about the lyrics and the book scenes as the same thing. Like a lot of times my book scenes will kind of bleed seamlessly into lyric, and seamlessly out of lyric. But it's a different type of writing. I might say that like the creation of the book scenes feels the most tied to music lyric writing, and then when I'm editing the book scenes, that feels like it's like a different Joe
Okay.
then comes in and is like looking at things in a more sort of brutal way, and I'm like cutting and rearranging in a way that I'm a little bit more precious about my music and lyric writing. And because the the way that I write score stuff, sometimes things come really fast, but for the most part, it's very, very methodical. It is very, very thought out. It feels like I'm constructing songs and extended musical sequences in a way that's like, it's planned out within an inch of its life, and it's usually planned out in a way to make it all feel like it's not. Like it's I love when, music, and especially for something like Hunter, when it feels improvisatory and it feels alive and it feels like there's no form, but there's always like such extreme structure and extreme form that it's I'm very protective of the musical and lyrical builds in songs, and I never want to remove things just for the sake of making something shorter, which is always an issue with me because I'm very verbose, and I love things that run on for too long, and it's a taste thing for me. But I understand that like people don't want to be sitting in a theater for 5.5 hours, so I end up always having to like cut things I don't want to cut. But I'm quicker to cut scene stuff than I am score stuff. Always.
So when I was reading the book over the summer, I was thinking about the musical. It came to me, and I wonder if this ever connected with you, that the way Hunter S. Thompson is kind of connected to the greater journalism world. A lot of similarities, I feel like, to the way you are connected to like the greater musical theater world. Kind of the oh, Gonzo is such an overused term, but kind of like that outsider, not doing the traditional air quotes thing. Did you ever kind of get that vibe too?
You know what is so embarrassing? I never really related in a surface way to Hunter S. Thompson throughout most of the writing process. I don't know why. There were definitely moments, there are songs and scenes that are specifically about writing in this musical, and as I was working on them, I was of course drawing parallels between Hunter and my own experience. But it wasn't until we did the workshop in 2022. This is after, working on the show for 10 years and thinking about the show for 15 years. And I saw it staged, that I looked at it and was like, oh, I like wrote a musical about me. Really, really did. This is just this is just me. Um, and Hunter, things that I had Hunter say without even, you know, um, thinking about it. Like it was like, oh my God, like I say those things. I have said these literal things that I have now put in the mouth of Hunter S. Thompson, and it's just me. It's just me. And so yes, I had not thought about it until I literally saw it. But yes, once I saw it, then it was impossible to unsee it and impossible to extricate myself from Hunter. And yeah, it's like not lost on me that he was both part of the kind of like, quote unquote mainstream, and not at all part of it. And he wanted it and he didn't want it. And all of the sort of tensions in his life, and his striving to, be accepted by a certain type of person, and his striving to have his writing be heard by the greatest number of people, while also wanting to main, maintain his voice and stay true to his artistic impulses. All of that stuff is stuff that I feel deeply.
So what's next for the show? I mean, it had its run in La Jolla, so in this stage of this is part of a writer's life too. So what is the kind of the next stage for a show like this?
Yeah, I mean, we are putting plans together for our next production of the show, which will hopefully be soon. Um, and I can't really talk a lot about it, but also I can't really talk a lot about it because honestly, I don't know
Okay.
where. I mean, that's the truth. I'm trying to like I'm in this moment, I'm trying to be coy, but also it's like I don't know when this thing's happening, but there will be another production slash productions. I just don't know when. I would really like it to be soon. Um, but I don't know. It's a weird time for musicals. It's always been a weird time for musicals, but right now it feels especially strange in the world of musical theater, for the types of shows that I write, and for the types of shows that the Untitled Unauthorized Hunter S. Thompson musical is. The joke of it, I think, is that the Untitled Unauthorized Hunter S. Thompson musical, while on the surface seems like something that's strange, it's actually like a pretty crowd pleasing show. I think it's got tunes that people like. It's hummable. It's funny. I can really point to many other successful musicals that I think it's sort of like, and it's so weird to have this musical that feels like, oh, it's this strange, this strange edgy thing, and it's like, no, like it's not. It's really not. Like it's really just like it's like a funny musical that's about some real stuff. And so yeah, I don't know. I'm really like, I don't know if you could tell, I'm in this like strange place in my life as an artist, where I'm really feeling like, how do I continue to do this thing that I care so much about, and that I think other people care about, and how do I keep making stuff that I think other people relate to, when it just continues to be so hard. And how am I supposed to compete with Back to the Future? Like it's like I there's always been shows like Back to the Future. I'm not like ragging on Back to the
Yeah.
Future. It's insert anything like Back to the Future here. Um, it's like, but how does one possibly compete with that? Um, especially when it feels like that type of thing is not all there is, but is it's most of what there
Hmm.
is. Um, yeah, and I don't
Yeah.
know.
There's a lot of Huey Lewis on Broadway right now. And again, no judgment. I love Huey Lewis in the news, but between that and the Heart of Rock and Roll opening, there's a lot of Huey Lewis on Broadway right now.
Yeah, and that's good for everyone, I guess. I mean,
Yeah.
the annoying thing to me is just that, like, there's a million new musicals opening this year, and everyone is like, just the think pieces alone are enough to drive a person crazy. And it's like, it's like every day, it's like, here's the think piece about why it's so great. There's all these new musicals, and here's the think piece about why it's so bad. There's all these new musicals. And the truth of it is that, like, I of course want them all to succeed. We know that they will not, just because of, like, that's how things work. And so, a bunch of them are going to close. And then I already know the think pieces that will happen then are people being like, see, audiences don't want to see new musicals, which
Hmm.
is absolutely incorrect, I believe. Um, but it's like, it's just it's such a weird time, man. It's crazy. But also, like, I love Huey Lewis,
Yeah.
like, let there be Huey Lewis. Great, fantastic. Let there also be other things that are good that
Yes.
people want to see, not just things that, like, check whatever boxes people have decided need to be checked. Um, it's like, let there be things that are weird and strange and good and and true.
So I get you out of here with a question. Actually, two questions. One I ask everybody, and one I'll ask you because you're on Broadway. We were just talking about it. So, best show you've seen lately, and best thing that you've read lately.
Best show I've seen lately is I have two. Uh, the number one is Oh Mary, which is just, it's absolutely killer. I loved it so much. It's very funny. But I found it very, very inspiring. I love the play itself. It's like the sort of, like, uptown, downtown, highbrow, super trashy kind of stuff that I love.
Okay.
Uh, and I wish that I had a child to bring my child to see Oh Mary. I think that I think it's like the best family show in town, even
Nice.
with, like, there's some, like, sex stuff in it, but whatever.
Yeah.
The kids got to see it sometime. So that, and Days of Wine and Roses. I love Days of Wine and
Okay.
Roses. I thought
Hmm.
it was really beautiful. And I loved, it was really refreshing to see a good old fashioned pretentious musical. I I loved it. It was like this. It felt like it felt like this is theater with a capital T,
Hmm.
in a way that's like good, great. I love seeing that. Thank you very much. This is, it's like, and that is like a sure. I give me 10 shows with Huey Lewis songs in them,
Hmm.
and so Days of Wine and Roses. Maybe
Right.
give me 5 Days of Wine and Roses. So that made me really, really, really happy. And best thing I've read lately, I'm in the middle of reading Jennifer Ashley Tepper's last volume of Untold Stories of Broadway,
Hmm.
which, if you don't know the series, it's like, it's these
So
books.
good.
Oh my God, it's the best. It's these books that chronicle the histories of all of the theaters on Broadway as told by people who have worked in the theaters. And everyone from, like, Hal Prince to, like, an usher to a musician to Donna McKechnie. Like, it's this incredible, like, array of interviews that she did for these books. And so the last one came out during the pandemic, and I had realized that I started to read it during the pandemic, and then it made me too sad because all the theaters were closed. I was like, I'm going to return to this, and I only recently was like, oh my God, I never read the last Untold Stories. And so now I'm in the middle of it, and it's just it's the greatest. I feel like it's the greatest gift the universe has ever given me, that I forgot that I had not read that book until right now, because it's making me very happy.
Yeah, we actually Jennifer was on when that book came out, when the last one came out. We talked
Yeah.
about all the stories, and oh my God, I can't. They're so good. Those books are amazing.
Oh, they're incredible and so inspired. I just read this. I read this amazing story from Lonnie Price, who I love so much, from the original Merrily. And he was talking about how he was in LA doing pilot season, and he was very depressed. And Hal Prince called him, and Hal Prince was like, "There's this play that I'm producing that we're bringing in from, I forget, it was running out of town. Just George Abbott directed it. And he's like, and we have to replace the lead in it. And it's like this really quick thing. It's like, it's like we're about to go to Broadway. We're just rehearsing it for one more week because we just came for this thing. Do you want to come and play the lead in this show? And Lonnie Price was like, yeah, sure. And Lonnie Price had to fly to Florida, where George Abbott was living before coming to New York to be okay. So he flies to Florida, he gets okay, he comes to New York, he rehearses this play, opens the play, and then it closed very quickly after. And Lonnie Price was like, oh, this was such an amazing experience. I wouldn't trade it for anything. It was really like there were so many ups and downs, and in the book it's like pages long, this whole thing. And he's like, and from the time that Hal Prince called me when I was in California to the closing of the play, that entire time was 2.5 weeks.
That's
And
amazing.
that's like it's like the ultimate theater story that I just relate to so deeply, where it just feels like, in any other person's life, that would take up, I don't know, 30 years of their life, like the
Right.
amount of like ups and downs and like all this drama. And in the theater, it's literally 2.5 weeks, and that's it. It's over forever. I
That's
love it.
awesome. So
Yeah.
we'll have a link to the book in the show notes, and hope to see Joe. Thanks for doing this, and we hope to see Hunter S. Thompson on a stage near us soon.
Yeah. Thanks, my friend. Thanks for having me.